Okay, before this video starts, I have one question to ask you. Okay, here we go. Do you know who Alex Kidd is? The Sega character? Red jumpsuit? He's in some Sonic and Sega All-Stars games? No? No idea at all? Well, there's a reason for that. Let's talk about why. Welcome to 30 for 30. I'm your host, Aiden of Blue Couch Productions, and on this show I'm trying to review 30 games in 30 days. For more info on the show's concept, be sure to watch the Altered Beast episode before this one. Don't worry, I'll be here when you come back. But yeah, welcome to the show. It's episode 2, and this time we're talking about Alex Kidd, a character with an interesting history to say the least. In the early 80s, he was on top of the world. He had a series of successful games, spin-offs, and was even the mascot for Sega. But by the year 1990, he had no more mainline entries, no more spin-offs, and was forgotten like an old relic. The only time you see him now is in some weird Sega party games for the most part. But how? How did that happen? How could Alex Kidd become the mascot of Sega and so popular and drop off the map in such a quick period of time? Well, let's talk about that. Our story begins with the Sega Master System and a little game called Alex and Miracle World. This was a huge hit for Sega. It was a cartoony platforming game in a time where platformers were kind of hit or miss. This one was pretty successful and reviewed well. What followed was a series of spin-offs until the Sega Genesis was released in 1989, and Sega thought, let's go ahead and bring that Alex Kidd guy over. Entering the second game, the game we're going to be talking about today, Alex Kidd and the Enchanted Castle. It's the second mainline entry and a direct sequel to Miracle World. And while the game looked better, it wasn't exactly reviewed all that well. 1 year later, 1990, was the last Alex Kidd game we'd ever see, called Alex Kidd and Shinobi World, and it was more of a spin-off where you kind of play similar to the Shinobi games by Sega. For those of you who know your history, you probably know the reason why it happened, but in case some of you are listening at home and don't know why, the answer is pretty simple. Sonic the Hedgehog happened. The first game was released in 1991 and was a huge hit. The media talked about him, Sonic's design was alternative and hip and cool, matching Sega's brand unlike Alex Kidd, and the games were so popular that they were actually competing with Mario. And as Sonic grew more and more popular, Alex Kidd sunk lower. I've just imagined a world where, let's say, Sonic didn't succeed. Would Alex Kidd still be the main franchise? Would we still be seeing Alex Kidd games like Alex Unleashed and Alex Colors and Alex Generations? I think that would be pretty funny, but that's not the world we live in. And hey, I don't blame Sega for making the switch. Like I said earlier, Sonic fit the brand more and he became the official mascot. But I do feel bad for Alex Kidd as a whole. What happened here? How could these games, were they any good in the first place? Or maybe they were all bad to begin with? All these questions and answers led me to looking at Alex Kidd and the Enchanted Castle for the Sega Genesis, and we're going to see whether or not the last mainline entry game holds up, or if there's a second reason why it fell into obscurity. All that and more in the second half of 30 for 30. We'll be right back after these messages. Oh, hi. I didn't see you there. I'm Aiden of Blue Couch Productions. And sometimes, on a great day like this, I like to sit out on my porch and bask in the great outdoors. I'll even carry a mug around with me and drink a hot cup of joe. Only not, because coffee is bad for you and you should drink water instead. Anyway, this mug, I've got issues with it. I mean, it's nice. It has a cute little reindeer on it. But I wish it had the Blue Couch Productions design. Well, worry no longer. This episode of 30 for 30 is sponsored by the Blue Couch Productions merch store. Would you like merch with my logo on it? Well, you can get it. Or how about one with the classic We Stand Little Man design? Oh, it's already there. Maybe even a Fortnite neon one for the kiddies? Don't worry, Santa Claus got you covered. Or in this case, Santa Aiden. Get it? So many great designs to choose from, all of them frequently on sale, and you can get them in a wide variety of items, including shirts, mugs, maybe even a hoodie for the cold winter months. You know, that Blue Couch Productions merch store is so epic, I can't even use this mug anymore. I'm disappointed to even be holding it. This water doesn't even feel good over here. Now I've washed away the sins. Just like you should wash away your own sins by heading to the Blue Couch Productions merch store, tpublic.com. Search Blue Couch Productions and you'll find the entire selection here. Honestly, do it for me, so you can have all your Blue Couch Productions designs in the comfort of your own home. Yeah, I think that'll do it. Back to your regularly scheduled episode of 30 for 30. Bye-bye now. Bye. Welcome back to the show, everybody. In the first part, we talked about the history of Alex Kidd, and now in the second part, I want to talk about his second mainline game, Alex Kidd and the Enchanted Castle, released in 1989 for the Sega Genesis. The game takes place in the fictional world of Paper Rock, a bizarre setting where everybody uses rock, paper, scissors to decide anything from items or even conflicts for the most part. Alex Kidd, our main character, is there because his father, King Thor, has been kidnapped, and it's up to Alex to rescue him. We find out later in the game, and spoiler alert, I guess, if you didn't know. It turns out King Thor was just vibing the whole time, and he was never in any real danger at all, and Alex Kidd is just presumably happy because he hasn't seen his father in 30 years, and yeah, King Thor might actually be an awful father figure now that I think about it. What's he been doing? Does he not have time to visit his son at all? Like, no, legitimately, stop the review. Legitimately, like, he rules over this Paper Rock land, and Alex presumably has not had a father figure in his life, and he's just been living with these people until finally he's old enough of age to go and rescue him, and then he gets there and he's like, oh, my son's here, great. Like, he's almost kind of iffy about it, like he's not really for sure if he really likes this, but Alex doesn't care anyway. Dude's been traumatized, and King Thor is just an awful father figure. Bad father issues aside, that's the plot of Alex Kidd, and it's a cute, charming little story. The world itself is also pretty cool. Paper Rock is a unique setting. I like the two towns that you visit, and you also go through a prairie, a desert, a pyramid, some mountains, and even woods with some Jason Voorhees-like woodcutters to stand in your path. It's a cute, cartoony game. It's not shooting for realism like Altered Beast. And I think because of that, Alex Kidd ages better as a result. The aesthetic is nice. Alex's design with the little red jumpsuit and yellow lines is cute. He's always looked like Luke Skywalker to me, or maybe a monkey. And graphically, I just adore the game as a whole. Soundtrack-wise, it's kind of hit or miss. It's not bad by any stretch of the imagination. The word I would use is mediocre. Very little of it is actually memorable outside of the main town theme and the rock, paper, scissors theme. So the game looks good, and it sounds relatively okay. The gameplay, yeah, we gotta talk about that part. Like I mentioned earlier, Alex Kidd is a side-scrolling platforming game. You move from left to right, and you jump and you fight enemies. You actually can't jump on enemies' heads, because remember, this is Sega, so they don't want to be like that Mario. No, here, if you jump on an enemy, you immediately die. Instead, Alex Kidd has a series of moves and combat attacks that he can use to deal with his enemies. We have a standard punch, a punch where you have to duck on the ground and then punch, and then a jump kick. The moves, for the most part, are kind of clunky. I don't like how they work a lot of the time. The punch requires an obscene amount of timing. The duck punch is the safest, but now you're on the ground. And the jump kick, I don't even want to talk about the jump kick. It feels like I'm playing Russian roulette half the time, where sometimes the kick will land and defeat the enemy, and other times it'll go right through them, and I'll immediately die. And believe me, you do not want to die in Alex Kidd. You only get 3 lives, 1 hit and you're dead, and guess what? There's no continues. Man, what is up with Sega and not putting continues in their games? Seriously, Altered Beast did it, I understand, because it's an arcade game, but why not Alex Kidd? It's a platformer. Go ahead and put a continue in the game. Jeez. The game isn't long. It's only about 30 minutes, slightly longer than an Altered Beast, and I wouldn't say Alex Kidd is even remotely as difficult. Sure, the 1 hit and you're dead thing's kind of an issue, but the levels are never really all that complex. All the elements feel lackadaisically put together, and the level design doesn't offer much outside of, oh, here's some trees, and here's some sky. That's about it. And yeah, I think it's about time that we talk about that rock, paper, scissors mechanic. This is the one element of Alex Kidd in the Enchanted Castle that has not held up well, and I think it's the thing that kind of ruins a lot of the game. But how does it work exactly? So in the 2 town levels, there are these little houses, and when you go into a house, there will be a guy who will challenge you to a game of rock, paper, scissors. If you win, you end up getting an item. If you lose, well, no harm, no foul. You lose a little bit of money, but you're on your way for the most part. Boss fights, however, are a completely different game. For those, you actually go into the boss fight, play a game of rock, paper, scissors, and whether or not you win or lose, if you win, you get to move on. If you lose, though, you actually lose a life, so the punishment is pretty extreme. I already mentioned that you only have 3 lives, so imagine losing one to a boss fight and then having to play the entire level over again. That's when those items are pretty helpful. They can help you get through the stage a lot quicker, and the token letting you see what the other guy is going to pick is extremely helpful, although they still randomly cycle through it. But yeah, losing a game of rock, paper, scissors to not get an item is frustrating. Losing to a boss is equally frustrating, and there's no pattern I've found at all. They pick different things every time, so it's not like this boss always picks paper or this one always picks rock. You'll never know what they'll do, and you just kind of have to flip a coin and hope you get lucky. It's this rock, paper, scissors mechanic that makes Alex Kidd unfun. I lose all my lives and then I end up quitting out of frustration. And it's a shame too, because I think the main game is pretty good. The platforming is fine, the moves are kind of clunky, and the level design's okay, but it's still a fun cartoonish platformer. But when you add on that rock, paper, scissors mechanic, the whole thing suffers as a whole. I give Alex Kidd in the Enchanted Castle 2.5 out of 5 stars, an average game with one awful idea. But that's it for this episode of 30 for 30. If you liked the video, be sure to leave a like. If you're new here, be sure to subscribe. And hey, share this video with a friend. Maybe they need to know about the bizarre history of Alex Kidd. Anyway, I've been Aiden of Blue Couch Productions, and I'll see you tomorrow for another episode of 30 for 30. Bye-bye.